one of the things that, as a manifestation, which you refer to Africa in passing, but in the Congo, there's some 6 million, it is estimated some 6 million people have been killed through financing of different criminal gangs for plundering mineral resources from the continent. In fact, the coltan, which is used in mobile phone and used in laptop computer and so forth, satellite communication and so forth, is a direct consequence of that situation. So there's 6 million people. In fact, there's another situation where people try to escape the plight, the deprivation and the poverty, in that trying to cross from Asia to Africa to into Europe, where people, bodies have been left drowned in the sea, and the bodies have been left in the sea for days with nobody wishing to retrieve them, to bury them. But I just want to show you a consequence of the super exploitation. As an example, in Jamaica, for instance, the debt, which is about some 11 billion US dollars, and for every dollar earned, 60% of that dollar, 60 cents of that dollar has to go toward servicing the debt. But not only that, you also find a situation whereby the unemployment rate is way beyond the official figure, which is 25%, but it's higher than that. But on top of that, there's another problem, the ecological disaster that is taking place, that there has been a massive spending to attract foreign tourists into the country. And all because they've left a vast ecological disaster there, where the coastal areas used to have a lot of fishes, and that's gone. So people now cannot fish, and sewage is pumped into the world's creation. So what I want to ask you is, given that situation, which a massive repayment of debt, what percentage, if you know, of that debt goes towards back into the British financial system or world financial system? If just as I just present a microcosm using Jamaica as an example. I hope my question makes sense to you.
Okay.
Sorry, I take that now.
It's all good, man.
Yeah. What I want you to bear in mind is anything that the banks do in this country and get away with, where we have, a trade union movement, we have people that are organised to a certain degree, right, is indicative that anything that happens in the third world, is 10, 15 times as bad, at least, right? So you asked me a question about what the banks are doing. For example, those borrowing without security from a British bank or UK bank, because you can't sort of distinguish between who owns banks. I mean, banks in this country basically that are based in this country and legally are in this country. Okay, you can expect to pay 11%, right? And the banks, the current bank rate is 0.5%, right? If you take mortgage lending, right? Mortgage lending, interest rates on mortgage lending have fallen around 2 percentage points to 4%, right? Less than half the 5% drop in the bank rate. Right? That's on average, right? So, I mean, they're just screwing people, literally, if they're prepared to lend you anything anyway. And the rates on credit cards now have just gone through the roof. So, I mean, they are, they're just doing what they want. Nobody's going to move them. This is how they work. Now, I just give you the figures from, I haven't sort of brought them up to date, but this will do. From 1998 to 2005, right? The external debt of what is called the underdeveloped countries, right? started at $2,407.5 billion, yeah, and went up in 2005 to $3,012.3 billion, right? And every year paid back, for example, in 98, $370.8 billion was paid back. In 2005, $597.8 billion. Notice that the debt is going up all the time, and they're paying back even more than they were paid back before. And I think if I can find where I added it up, I mean, it turns out that they paid back, yeah, here we are, it went from 2,407 billion to 3,012 billion, despite these countries having paid back 3,653.3 billion. In other words, they paid back more than, much more than they owed in the first place. And that is debt servicing, right? So it gives you some idea how much is being screwed out, and that process is going on and on. But, we then have to say, how are they treated, these countries, right? Well, what happens if they decide to put up a barrier, right, to imperialism, to the IMF, and so on? Well, think of ALBA, for example, the countries that have joined together to try and offer, at least some kind of state welfare, justice, an organisation of democracy in the interests of the poorer sections of the population, right? Think of Venezuela, think of Ecuador, think of Nicaragua, and so on and so forth, and Bolivia, of course, yeah? What are the imperialists attempting to do? And it's attempting to destroy those countries. Those countries are a massive threat to this process of plundering and looting the world, because they've put up a barrier to it, right? And, read the press about these countries. Read the Progressive Guardian on Venezuela.
Nothing there.
You think you're dealing with, the worst sort of dictatorship in the world, the way Rory Carroll writes in the press. Why? Why is Chavez such a hate figure? Because he's redistributing the wealth of the country in the interest of the vast majority, instead of a small oligarchy, right, that controls the major companies and the financial sector of the economy. That's what the reality is. It is class war. It's a class battle. And, the process of this struggle that we're going to go through over the next 4, 5, 10 years maybe, is to understand that we have to align ourselves, not with the Labour Party, not with those that are trying to sustain the status quo in this country, whether they be trade unions or pretend leaders of various movements. But our interests, should be aligned with those fighting imperialism throughout the world. Because unless this imperialist system, this system of plunder, this system of, literally screwing the vast majority of the world so we can have the high standard of living that we, exists in this country for still large sections of the population. It's going to disappear soon, right? But still exists. Unless, we understand we have to align with those fighting imperialism and destroy imperialism, we'll lose. And we'll have the kind of barbarism that we saw during the 2 world wars, right? With, 2 wars and fascism essentially being the consequences of the failure of the movement to destroy imperialism. So, I think there are big, big lessons here, but you can't sort of jump 10 steps ahead. You just have to sort of take the issues as they arise and show that the issues are not what they seem to be, right? The underlying everything is the crisis of British imperialism, essentially, where the main powers throughout the world, in my view, are just fighting for the largest share of the looting and plundering of the rest of the world, because the actual social stability in the main capitalist countries is dependent on that looting and plundering, right? That is the reality. And we have to understand this, that, our The people who we have to fight along are those who are fighting that system.
Thank you.